Howdy, we're back at the storage unit. No weird sounds this time from me. I'll just dive right in. This box is Daredevil, so we'll see how we do here. And yes, you will see some Frank Miller comics. So just
it's not labeled.
yeah, it's not labeled. So just be patient, and we'll get to the Frank Miller stuff. But there's also plenty of goodies before that. So
Is Frank Miller a writer?
Frank Miller started out as an artist and then became a writer, and it could be said that his writing was even better than his art, which is pretty amazing. So he also he's the guy who did the Dark Knight comic book series that pretty much revitalized comic books in the 80s. So between him and Alan Moore's Watchmen, it's pretty safe to say that the 80s was a golden era for comic books.
All right.
Anyway, this is a very early issue of Daredevil, number 19. It's a John Romita cover, and John Romita went on to...
John Romita or John Romita Jr.?
John Romita, the dad.
Ah.
Yep. So he went on, of course, to fame. He was already a well-known artist, but he went on to greater fame by becoming Spider-Man's regular artist after Steve Ditko left. But he did a few issues of Daredevil before that, and that's one of them. And this might be one too, number 20. So there's Daredevil versus the Owl.
The verdict is death.
So now we skip up to 42, and now Gene Colan is the artist of Daredevil here, but still Stan Lee stuff. So that's the Jester, another longtime foe of Daredevil's. And there he is again, the final Jest.
Stanley Tucci? No, Stan.
Yes,
Lee.
Penny, which is kind of funny in and of itself because Stan Lee's actual name is Stanley Lieber. But
yeah.
So anyway, here comes Daredevil. Man with that. So this is Daredevil's a coward apparently. So.
To be fair, it's from The Big Bang Theory. It's supposed to be funny.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, Big Bang Theory did hit most of the time. This is the Assassin taking on Daredevil. So we're jumping around. These were in the 50s. This is number 84. This is number 95. And as usual, I have other Daredevil issues.
Daredevil and the Black Widow.
Somewhere else, yep. And the Bull, the Man Bull.
It doesn't say the Man Bull in the title, though.
Yeah.
Oh, it does.
In the character. That's just a blurb. So this looks like a Gil Kane cover, so that's cool. So, Daredevil 100. And really, unfortunately, could not really be in much worse shape. It's pretty warped. But if you're interested in having a copy of Daredevil 100,
Hasn't been exposed to flood water.
this looks like these indentations here look like this issue may have been on the end of a bundle of books that was bound together. Because these indentations seem to indicate that this book was on the very end of the package, which in those days they didn't really care about that kind of stuff. Here's 109, and this is 112. Murder Cries the Mandrill, and this is a really great cover. This is a nice, as far as John Romita covers go, this is a really great cover. That's Gladiator, who became a more important character later. And speaking of characters who became more important,
Who became a more important character later?
Gladiator. And Deathstalker also became a much more important character later too. So that was some cool stuff. I think that Marv Wolfman was writing the title. This is one of the earliest Daredevil comics that I remember reading as a kid. So there's nothing, super noteworthy about this. It's a very good issue, but there's no, guest appearance or this character became well known later. It's just a really good issue. This is the second appearance of Bullseye, who's a perennial foe of Daredevil's and has become a prominent character. He even appeared in season 3 of Daredevil, so I have 2 copies of that. At the time, in the 70s, there was this guy named Uri Geller who allegedly could, bend keys with his mind and do all this other stuff and was later exposed as a fraud, but he did enjoy a certain level of celebrity enough to get himself in.
Bend keys, what was he, a demon?
Whatever, and yeah, but he had enough celebrity to find himself in a comic book, so that's pretty good for a fraud. Here's the Jester again. More Jester. 138. This is an issue that features Ghost Rider and Karen Page, who had been out of Daredevil's comic for about 70 issues by this point. So
Was she Matt Murdock's wife?
She was Matt Murdock's girlfriend and potential lover. She appeared in the series, and she also became a much more important character later. But by this time, they had effectively written her out of the series. But she made a brief appearance and then disappeared again for another 100 or so issues. But when she came back, it was quite dramatic, as we'll get to. So here's 139.
That's not her coming back after 70 issues?
That's her making a very brief appearance, and her second return is much more impactful.
Huh.
So this is Beetle and this is Gladiator with his
Between the
whirling-
beetle and the blades.
Yeah. That's Cobra and Mr. Hyde. I think these books were still written by Marv Wolfman, but I think they might have been drawn by Bob Brown, who was an old school DC artist. Cobra and Hyde again. Man Bull again. So these issues I remember picking up and reading as a kid. Owl.
Deadly is the owl by night.
147. So here's some Gil Kane art in these. 148. There's Deathstalker again, who I mentioned becomes an important character later. 149. Here's 150. First appearance of Paladin, which is somewhat of a collector's item issue. 151. Really, this is where Daredevil started to get interesting. There were a lot of fun plots going on at the time. So here's Paladin again, 152, 153. And if you can feel yourself getting excited watching this video, yes, we are coming up on the Frank Miller issues very soon. Daredevil versus the Avengers, because he'd suffered a concussion and wasn't in his right state of mind.
The Avengers, Hercules.
157, great issue. This is the issue right before Miller became the artist. And there's Deathstalker.
Oh, is this that guy that said, you can't touch me, but if I touch you, you die?
Yep. So
That's why he's called Deathstalker?
Yep.
So how do you beat him then?
He phases in and out of reality, so he can... and if he's solid, he has to be solid in order to touch you. And then if he's solid and you don't touch his hands, then you can, Daredevil found out that you can kick him around if he's solid at the time. So, but yeah, the end story of how Deathstalker died was great, and it was told in 158, which I do not have because it's the first Miller issue and it's a very valuable issue. But I do have 161, which features...
Why is it that when they're very valuable issues, you don't have them? Isn't it like, couldn't you have had them from when you were
I
like,
did,
in the
but
70s?
I might have only had one copy, which would mean that...
and then when you sold it, it was...
Yeah, when I sold it was gone. But yeah, so here's 161 featuring Black Widow again. 164, great issue where Ben Urich figured out who Daredevil was, and the whole issue was kind of like a memorial issue of Daredevil's career, but it's got great Frank Miller art, and it's a terrific story going over the history of Daredevil and helping the friendship of Matt Murdock and Ben Urich that was shown prominently in later issues of Daredevil.
Is Ben Urich like the guy that Hamlet talks about while holding a skull in his hand?
That's Yorick. This is
I know.
Urich, but yeah, Ben Urich was like a reporter for the Daily Bugle, and
I just wanted to make that joke.
Alas, poor Urich. Yeah.
Wait, the Daily Bugle is in Daredevil?
Yeah, it's in all of Marvel. So this is Daredevil 167, the issue right before Frank Miller took over writing and art, which was 168, which of course I don't have. But
How shocking.
here's 173. So this is full-on Marvel, full-on Daredevil by Frank Miller, story and art. So
The end?
yep, there's Elektra, 176. The Hand is featured. There's a ninja group. This is 177, a strange issue, but cool.
If there's more than one ninja, is it ninjas or just ninja?
179. This is a great issue that has a kind of a shock ending, which of course they undid because the shock ending was way too much for the characters.
You mean a character came back to life?
Yeah, it happens.
How shocking.
180 is I think this features Vanessa Fisk, but Kingpin's wife, but I'm not sure if that's the one. I think it is though.
Oh.
Now 181.
Kingpin has a wife?
Yeah.
Huh.
This is the classic Bullseye versus Elektra confrontation. Readers of comic books would absolutely recognize this issue as a special one. So it's really great stuff. This is Matt Murdock dealing with the death of Elektra, so you can maybe kind of figure out how 181 turned out if you are paying attention. 183 features the Punisher. Great stuff. 186. Now by this time, Frank Miller has strictly gone to writing and doing covers for Daredevil, and Klaus Janson took over the art. But he had been his inker for the longest time, so the art style was very similar. Daredevil's senses go haywire. Daredevil fighting ninjas. Daredevil fighting ninjas and Elektra reappears.
I think it's just ninja.
191, the last issue of Frank Miller's Daredevil. Kind of an introspective issue with Daredevil and Bullseye. Very cool. So then we move into the new era of Daredevil, which I believe was written by Denny O'Neil. But I'm going to gloss over these a little bit because I'm running out of time on the video, but of course Bullseye is ever present, even without Frank Miller. So now we move into the 200s. This is issue 200 with the great John Byrne cover. Have a couple of those. And now into later 200s, 201. So we move through the 200s, this 202, 204. So I have a bunch of these. 206, 207. Some good...
Are they stuck together?
Some of them do, yeah. Bill Sienkiewicz covers. Haunted by Hydra. Hunted. Harlan Ellison story. Sometimes the older bags stick a little bit. 209, 210. And then David Mazzucchelli, the artist of Born Again, started around this time.
Is that Kingpin again?
Yep, that's Kingpin and that's Daredevil. So cool cover. And David Mazzucchelli, as I said, was the regular artist of Daredevil at this time, so he was around. Here's the Jester turning up. And then a little taste. Here's Frank Miller returning to Daredevil as the writer. And he also provides a cover, which is pretty cool. So definitely a nice little thing. 219. And then 220 features an idea. I think it was a plot assist by Frank Miller in this issue. And Heather Glenn, unfortunately, meets her fate in this issue. Longtime girlfriend of Daredevil for many issues. But so here's Daredevil in Italy. And then some other stories. 223, this is a great Secret Wars 2 crossover in which the Beyonder gives Daredevil his sight back. So he spends the issue going around the city, seeing all the things that he only
I thought he was the man without fear. That face looks fearful.
Yeah, because he's facing the Beyonder, who's an all-powerful being. They're just kind of trying to emphasize.
But he's the man without fear.
Okay, so let's just focus on the issue.
I know.
So he gets his sight back.
I'm just making fun of them for subheading all of it, the man without fear.
And at the end of the issue, he forces the Beyonder to take his sight back, even though he realizes what a gift it was. And the Beyonder had said, you know, you can keep your sight. It's considered a gift. And he said, no, take it back. And it's a really, really great issue. So I have a lot. I think I have like 5 copies of it. So here's Daredevil 224.
Wait, why does he not want his sight?
Because he doesn't want to feel like he owes the Beyonder anything. He doesn't want to be feeling like he's in his debt, even if the Beyonder says you can have it. He's just like, no, just I want it.
So he didn't beat the Beyonder? The Beyonder just decided to stop attacking him?
It's interesting because the Beyonder was seeking knowledge and information about the human race. So he put Daredevil through, you know, this test to see how he would respond and react to this. And so Daredevil took him and did all this stuff, and the Beyonder was keeping an eye on him, and he felt he'd learned a lot. So he said, you know, you've taught me a lot, so why don't you just keep the sight? And Daredevil said no, because he's a man of principle. And he said, no, there's a string attached. I don't want it. Take it back. And if you read the issue, it makes more sense. So this is...
No, I was going to say, if he gave the Beyonder a whole bunch of things...
How much time do we have?
It's 12:27 right now. Okay. If I was going to say, if the Beyonder was getting a whole bunch of things from Daredevil, then I don't know why the Daredevil would feel like he owed or the Beyonder anything.
You'd have to read the issue. It has to do with principle and morality. So Daredevil is a very principled guy. This is 226, which features, this is the Gladiator in a different costume. He's been resigned by this point, and he opened up a costume shop, and he was forced into a situation to start committing crimes again, and Daredevil helped him. Really great stuff. So Frank Miller was co-writer on this issue. And then in, you know, what is one of the best series of the 80s, and this Daredevil Born Again is such a great example of what comic books can be. The writing is great, the art is great, and Karen Page and her dramatic return turns everything in Daredevil's life upside down.
Oh, this is that issue?
Yep, it turns everything in Daredevil's life upside down. And if you pay attention to the corner boxes, like in the Hulk, this is the corner box for this one. And in 228, they don't even have a corner box because of the events of 227. But then in 229, you can see there's a different corner box of a character looking like they're you know, fighting for their life.
Oh, yeah.
And 230, there's a nun. So,
oh, because it's called Born Again?
Yeah, if you read the story, it would make sense. So there's Kingpin in the corner box with Daredevil fighting this guy who with a beard, which confused me at first, but it's a great story. This is 232, which is Daredevil getting the costume back on in the corner box for the first time in 5 issues. So this is Daredevil against Kingpin, and there's Nuke, who was a prominent character. He turned up in Jessica Jones, and he was a guy who was like a mercenary who was hired to take on Daredevil and take him out, and then Captain America showed up, and they had a big battle, and lots of New York was destroyed, but Daredevil was restored as the heroic character. Great story arc. I mean,
oh, nice. Yeah.
I'm probably preaching to the choir as far as the viewers of this video goes, but I have the whole series of Born Again. If anyone is interested, I'd love to make a deal. So let me know. But that's it for this part of Daredevil. I have many issues after 233, and I'll do another video at some point to talk about those. But yeah, I have more Daredevils to sell, and if you're interested, please please let me know. eBay comments or or eBay messages and make a comment below, and we'll chat. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a good day.